Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly webinar. My name is Andreea-Deveau. I'm the co-founder and VP of Communications for KindLink. I have with me today Dr. Carole Hogan, Managing Director of Carole Hogan Associates, and Cadence Willis, Head of Employee Engagement and Corporate Social Responsibility at Collinson. Before I go to them and let them introduce themselves, I'll give you a bit of a background on KindLink. We are a technology platform supporting companies with all their CSR needs, from volunteering and fundraising to impact and sustainability goals measurement, all in one place. We offer the platform for free to nonprofits for them to manage their activity, fundraise, engage with potential supporters, and increase their general transparency in the space. We've created a special area in our opportunities marketplace to connect corporates with charities fighting the COVID-19 crisis, and we are seeing a lot of interest from companies and individuals looking to help. So if you are a company looking to help, go to kindlink.com and get involved. We've also launched a campaign to support the focus on CSR at the core of a company's business strategy, especially since CSR budgets have been cut across industries and initiatives have been put on hold. This campaign will include a series of live webinars and articles in our KindLink Global magazine with actionable insights from industry leaders and specialists, helping you bring back impact into the core of your business. Quick reminder that we have an option at the bottom of your screen for you to ask questions, so please do so and introduce yourselves. Now, Dr. Carole Hogan, Managing Director at Carole Hogan Associates, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great, thanks for that actually, Andrea. I've been working in the area of learning and development for maybe over 30 years now. So that's your cue for saying I don't look that old, but unfortunately time has moved on. And I work in universities, I do research, but I also work in companies, helping them with their leadership development and their talent development. And we've written a number of books on developing managers and leaders, learning and development, and the latest book is Strategic Learning and Development. So I think my background is mainly on developing talent and developing leaders and developing people and organizations. That's my expertise area.
Thank you, Carole. Cadence Willis, Head of Employee Engagement and Corporate Social Responsibility at Collinson. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, Andrea, and hi, Carole. Like you said, I'm the head of employee engagement and CSR at Collinson Group. Collinson is we're a privately owned entrepreneurial business based here in the UK, but we have we work across 20 locations globally, and we're a global leader in loyalty and benefits. So we work with a lot of well-known brands to help them acquire and engage their customers and retain their customers, and have a number of well-known brands such as Priority Pass, which is our global network of airport lounges, and which we have been hit quite significantly as part of the COVID-19 crisis, like others in the travel industry. My role at Collinson, I feel very privileged to work with a number of very passionate people that we have working for us to help make the change that we want to see in the world. And yeah, that's my area of focus.
Thank you. So what we're discussing today is employee engagement. It is at the core of a company's long-term strategy. Businesses that understood that point have been more likely to attract talent from the Millennial and Generation Z generations, and have thrived in a happy working environment. But some of the core things teams could do together, such as volunteering, are likely off the table for a while. So what shall we do now? So my first question to you is, the crisis has changed how how employers interact with their employees. What will a post-crisis work environment look like? Shall I start with Cadence?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I think like many people on this call, we're seeing that the situation's changing, daily, and I don't think there will be a one-size fits all approach. I mean, every industry is different. We've seen a lot here in the UK. We've seen a lot of our construction and manufacturing industries start back this week. They have very obvious needs from a health and safety point of view, for protecting their people and ensuring they can return safely to work. At Collinson, we predominantly, our employees have been able to work from home during this time, and are continuing to work from home until for the foreseeable future. think our workplace, we were lucky that we invested in technology that enables us to work really well from home. We connect very regularly. We've tried to move some of our rituals and traditions that we'd normally have face-to-face into online environments. We've found new ways of connecting. We've seen some really lovely new routines pop up, such as trivia nights and Friday night drinks and all of those things that we would normally do in person. So I think what we're trying to do is to make the best of what is a really tough situation for everyone right now, whilst absolutely starting to prepare our offices for when we can open. And like I said, they're all slightly different. They're in 20 different locations, different government advice applies. So we are trying to interpret that government advice and to put in place plans so that as soon as we can safely have our people return, that we're ready to go. But in the meantime, really focusing on keeping people engaged and connected.
Thank you. Carole, would you like to add to that?
Yes, and I think engagement and connection is vital in this time. Particularly managers and leaders need to connect with their employees. And sometimes these managers and leaders probably need to be upskilled in that process, because we're all in a very precarious situation and we're all suffering from a lot of anxiety. So in order to be able to be effective, I think the manager needs to put on their own energy mask first, I think, really. And I think that's why I would advocate in this circumstance that some of the things we've done with organizations is we've done lots of webinars with their managers, helping them to focus on themselves first to see how they can cope, and also giving them strategies to help their employees cope, and to engage in a type of secure-based leadership, I think. And most importantly, demonstrate empathy, because that can be quite difficult at times like this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We're doing a lot of what we call like bite-sized learning and remote learning, some tailored specifically for leaders, because you're right, it is something leading through a crisis absolutely requires a different skill set. So we're doing a lot of that bite-sized learning. We've also got a number of other sort of peer-to-peer learning programs running that's enabling people to really connect and learn from each other and share. And we use Workplace as our sort of internal comms network, and we have a lot of tips that we share on there pretty much daily around mindset, around tips from working remotely from home, how to set up your workstation, even from the garden to the kitchen to the lounge. There's a little bit of humor in there too, to try and get people raise the spirits a bit. But you're right, there's lots of support needed at the moment.
And I agree with you. Sorry for interrupting there. In terms of being enthusiastic and being positive, because there's so much negativity out there. I think the manager, in effect, or the leader, is the role model, and we connect with them and we look to them for guidance. So it's really important for them to maintain this level of, we'll say, balanced positivity. I don't mean sort of Pollyanna type positivity, but balanced positivity, so that they can talk to, connect with, and communicate with their people on a regular basis.
You've touched upon something very important, that leaders are crucial in this time. Well, they're quite important usually, but in this particular time, they are crucial in driving everything forward. And you've mentioned one thing, making sure they put their own masks first before helping anybody else. Are there any other tips and tricks you would like to pass on for team leaders, for them to navigate this crisis and help their teams survive too?
Very good. Do you want to take that one, Cadence?
Sure. And I'm sure you can jump into, Carole.
Of course. Yeah.
I think one thing I would say is that we're seeing, like I mentioned before, lots of different ways that people are connecting, because not all leaders are the same. Everyone has different leadership styles. Even just being on video and being so on show, some people feel really uncomfortable with. So we're seeing daily stand-ups taking place across a number of our teams in the morning, checking in, just seeing how everyone is. I know in my team we try to do the same time every day, and we just ask each other how we are and raise any questions or concerns, and that's something that I really look forward to. We've got we're providing we've introduced a number of new sort of series and ways in which people are communicating. So we've introduced a new Leaders Ask Me Anything series. So we started with our CEOs. We're now making our way throughout other countries and other parts of our business, where people literally get the chance to ask our leaders anything they like, and they record their response, and we post that usually within 24 hours. We've got, like I mentioned, virtual drinks happening. We're encouraging our leaders to have their regular one-to-ones and their stand-ups, you know, as long as you've got the technology there to support that. Checking in with people. We've got a very active P&C function at Collinson, and one of the things we've been talking about recently is perhaps reaching out to the people who've been a bit silent. So if you've noticed that the individuals you haven't heard from for a little while, or someone you'd normally work with that you haven't connected with since the lockdown, just to give a virtual tap on the shoulder and check in and ask how people are doing. And we're really asking our leaders to do that as well. And we're just about to introduce a new leaders call, actually, a new Teams call once a month, where we're going to give all of our leaders globally a chance to connect and to talk about what's happening across our business, get a chance to ask each other things. And yeah, we're trialing a number of those things at the moment.
It's kind of like a community of practice, really, because you're learning as you go along. It's
definitely
managing on the edge of chaos. So it's really good to connect in with people to see what they're doing. I was talking to a man in Singapore today, and we were talking about the importance of values, and values are going to be extremely important to help people get through this crisis as well. But he was saying that in Singapore, he obviously needs to support his family living back in the Philippines, and he hasn't met anyone for ages and ages. And just this leadership forum was extremely useful in terms of connecting with people and sharing the loneliness that he was experiencing, because there's a major lockdown there at the moment. You can't even go out very much, I think. So he found it very beneficial. So something like that alone can be very worthwhile.
Yeah, and I'd say too that the mental health impact that COVID's having on people who are on people in general is just is huge, and we're finding that, you know, from even myself being a parent working from home and homeschooling 3 children, we have people living on their own who have been very lonely, people with existing sort of mental health conditions who this obviously has a huge impact on. It's global, well, it's UK Mental Health Awareness Week next week, but we're making it a global week, and we're going to be going all around and having our own sort of version of tea and talk, interviewing people, asking them how they're coping in this situation, sharing their stories, really helping others to see that they're not alone, and that we're all going through this in our own way. Being quite human, I think that's very important.
That's absolutely brilliant. I agree with you completely, because I suppose people need social support. It's core to mental health. They also need perspective, and sometimes a leader or a manager can help them gain perspective and give them some agency as well, to help them to feel that they have control in their lives. I think that's very important. So that's brilliant.
So it starts with the managers, but the whole HR and CSR approach might need to change in order to adapt and keep employees motivated and inspired. Where do you see that? How will that change? And how is it changing right now? I'm sure you're seeing a lot of, it's not business as usual, is it, in the CSR or in the HR space? So what are the likely changes we will see in the future, and what are we seeing now already?
Can I jump in there if you don't mind?
Go for it. You go, Carole.
Just from my experience, just today, actually, one of my clients rang me to talk about performance management and the importance of, you know, keeping a close eye on what employees were doing. And my attitude to that is we don't need performance management, we need performance conversations. And I think that that's probably the route that HR is going to have to take, because I know it's very important to have strategic KPIs and understand where the organization is going. But I think that has to be adapted based on this particular crisis. I don't know, would you agree with that?
I'm seeing everything adapting, if I'm honest, as a result of this of the situation we're in. I think on the CSR side, what I'm seeing is we have we have a lot of very passionate people who regularly give back in their communities. It's part of what keeps them engaged. It makes them feel great. We're really proud of the work that they do. It's a big part of our purpose at Collinson. But they haven't been able to do that during this time because they can't physically volunteer. Also, it's been things like the London Marathon being cancelled. People have been fundraising and putting so much effort in training into the supporting causes so important to them, and it's been really devastating. At the same time, the charity sector needing help more than ever. It's like the perfect storm, and I think corporates have been trying to figure out how best to be able to, with reduced budgets, continue to support both their people but also the charities that they have partnerships with. We've seen a bit of a shift towards virtual volunteering, so people are looking for opportunities virtually to volunteer. We've had a number of people that have been furloughed throughout this process, and as a result they've got more time on their hands as well, and we've seen some of them using that to volunteer, which we're absolutely encouraging. We're trying to promote volunteering opportunities as and when we find them that are virtual as well. We've also seen some people sort of shift the way that they would normally do things, so we've had a few people leave us to go on to new jobs during this time, and normally the tradition is you go for some drinks at the pub, or you do a whip around the office for a leaving gift or whatever. And one of the guys who left us yesterday, he asked, instead of what you'd normally do buy around, was to make a donation to his particular charity, and he raised just under £1,000 in 24 hours for a charity helping care leavers. And I think that's a really nice example of how just by a small behaviour change that we're still able to continue supporting, but it's perhaps just in a slightly different way.
That's an excellent example, because when I talked to Andreea earlier on, she was saying we don't want sort of theoretical academic examples here, we want practical examples. But one particular company that I work with, they support Down Syndrome Ireland, and one of the things they organised was a quiz. And I think they got 150 people involved, 150 teams involved. And I think they made up to around €2,500, which was great, actually. So it was a great feeling for the team that actually came up with the idea as well. And it was very motivational, and particularly from the corporate social responsibility point of view. And I see some of them are doing this couch to 5K thing, and organising virtual marathons and all that type of thing. Well, short marathons, obviously. So that seems to be working for people as well.
Definitely.
So it's a matter of identifying these opportunities for people to get involved. Who should that sort of lie with? Is it the team leader, or do you get your employees to sort of come up with ideas and pick from them, or how does it work now?
Can I jump in there? And sorry for taking over their Cadence, but just from my own experience, very briefly, one of the things we've done is conduct these surveys, and they're not kind of detailed employee surveys, but we adapt the survey to suit the needs of the people. So we tune in with them and find out from them what they think is the best approach, and then they come back with the ideas, and we pool the ideas and a team-based process. But I think it's always very important to get the ideas from the employees rather than you. You can guide them, but I think it's important to try and get the ideas from them. That's what creates the engagement, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we try to have a mix of both. So we have what we call our strengthening communities that we do, and this is about our people. So this is supporting them to support the causes that are important to them. We don't prescribe to them which charities they should be supporting or how they should be doing that. We basically we give them the platform to promote what they're doing. We encourage people to get involved. We match donations up to £250 per donation, and we see a lot of support momentum behind those programs, because it's personal. It's something that means something personal to you. Also, if it's your colleague who's doing the fundraising and you know them really well and you know why it's meaningful to them, we encourage them to tell that story. And I think my team and our internal comms team really tries to promote that and gets people to tell their stories, be it by video or photos, or tries to nurture that spirit that we have alive, really alive and well at Collinson. The other part is we do have our official charity partners, and we do work with them on a range of programs throughout the year. But again, because we're in different countries, different cultures, different needs, we tend to try and set a framework for that globally, but then really work with our in-country leads to understand is this going to be meaningful for your team? What are the needs in your local community? How can we best meet those? So I think we try very much to avoid saying this is what we're going to be doing, and we try to work with the people who really know how it's going to land, and do it in partnership.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Before I go to my next question, I would like to remind everyone that we have a Q&A section at the bottom of your screens. Please feel free to ask questions of the panelists, and please introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of background so that we can give you the most appropriate answer. You mentioned KPIs, and that's a buzzword that has been around for a long time. How will HR KPIs look like, let's say, in a year from now? What are the things we're going to look at? Some of them simply just don't fit anymore. Like they don't fit with today's reality. No worries, like we said before, Cadence, if we don't if we don't get a child,
it's the golden retriever. It's the golden retriever, not the child.
I have 2 golden retrievers.
Oh my gosh! It's the golden retriever. The golden retriever call.
The golden retriever convention.
If we don't get a child or a pet jumping in, it feels like it's a bit of a boring webinar. So
absolutely.
yeah, that's fun. No worries. So KPIs, there are things that are simply just not going to fit within today's world anymore when it comes to metrics. So what are some of the things that you feel will absolutely have to be considered? What will be at the core of, let's say, KPIs at the end of the year? When a company wants to sort of tally up what they've seen this year, what are the things they're going to look at when it comes to their employees?
Do you want to take that, Cadence?
Oh yeah. Do you know what? That's a big question, isn't it? I think the things that have always been important are even more important now, if I'm honest with you. I think things like engagement, so looking at how our people are feeling, what they're focused on, if they're getting a sense of purpose, a sense of value, do they feel united towards a common goal, do they understand the company's objectives, things that have always been really critical to maintaining an engaged employee. I think mental health, like I mentioned, health and well-being is going to be so critical. Everyone has been impacted by this crisis. We've had quite a few people that have lost loved ones. We've had others impacted in other ways. It's been really traumatic, and I think it's going to have quite a lasting impact. And I think keeping aware of how people are feeling and responding and providing the necessary support is going to be really important. I think the other thing, and it's less measurable, but I think it's around the storytelling. It's in, how are we going to get out of the situation that we're in? What does that trajectory look like? What are the plans that we've got in place? How can you personally make a difference? And then continue to give reports on progress, be it, weekly, monthly, whatever that cadence needs to be. I think making sure that we all move along together, and that people don't feel like they're being left behind. I know that they're the areas that I'm going to be really focused on over the next 6 months.
Fantastic. Carole?
No, I was just thinking there from an employee development point of view that this is the time to double up on your spending and learning and development and developing people. I think that's extremely important. We learned from our mistakes during the last recession when we cut budgets right, left and centre and created all sorts of difficulties. So I think we need to focus on how we can develop our employees, because new sets of skills are going to be required for the new normal, as you were talking about earlier on. And I think it's very important to tune into that. Some of the things we've been doing around that is that appropriate to talk about that now?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay. It's just online mentoring, online coaching, peer coaching, peer mentoring, reverse mentoring. All those types of things seem to work really well online. And again, to get back to Cadence's point of view that, you know, running mini learning sessions around that can be extremely important. So development is key as part of employee performance, I think, as well, because that's what's going to be different. Our skill sets will require different skill sets for the future. So we really now need to be upskilling our employees at this stage rather than tying them down on performance objectives. That needs to be done too, but still.
I think the other thing too that's really important is that diversity and inclusion remains front and center. So you know, we've been doing a piece of work looking at the data in our business and looking at things that we can do to bridge any gaps. You know, it is something that I think absolutely needs to not be forgotten about, because I think there are examples we're seeing at the moment of where you know, various communities are being impacted in different ways as a result of this crisis, and I think organisations have a really important role to play to ensure that the work being done around that doesn't stop and is actually fast tracked.
We talked about developing employees, and that's a brilliant point. Whether they're employees that are already with the company or new employees, there are ways to do things now that you can do online. And as you mentioned, Carole, they work. But what about that human touch? How do you make up for that? Because it is such a big part of team cohesion, isn't it? You know, the water cooler conversation that Cadence mentioned. It does sort of help to see people in person, you know, talk about things you wouldn't normally talk about in an office environment, just because people need to relate to each other and all of that. How do you make up for that, you know, for people missing that part of it?
I agree. I think it's very important to have the video connection. I think that's extremely important because you've got the body language there, which is very important, and you can capture emotions through that. So I think that's important. If you can use that platform very effectively, I think that can be well worthwhile. And again, even if you're just checking in on a regular basis, I think is so important. And asking people how they're feeling, I think, is really important too. And, you know, providing emotional support and through the video calls, demonstrating your empathy, trust and caring by asking the right questions, rather than all being about work and the company and what's happening. Maybe focus on the individual, I think, which is important, and maybe offer practical support and understand that the organization is accountable and make sure they understand that too as well. And give them social support because they probably do need help. And it may be checking in with other employees. One particular organization we know, they've got a virtual kitchen now. You've probably heard about that as well. But essentially, you know, a bit like Cadence when she's there with her 3 children and working and doing everything at the same time. It's a good thing to go online to the virtual kitchen and check in and meet people and just build relationships with them there. And it's interesting from my perspective because, as I've said, I've been around for a long time, and I usually do coaching sessions online and mentoring sessions online, but I prefer to do training one-to-one or training in groups. But now I'm beginning to realize that, you know, the video does actually work very well, and it's a magnificent lifeline for people when they can tune in, as long as it isn't too intense. And I suppose you need to watch out too, when you're on video and you're talking to your people, watch out for compassion fatigue. I think that's very important. And watch out for when they're feeling excluded. And I suppose just asking questions, how are you? Listen empathetically, ask questions. And sometimes it's important to reframe. If people are feeling negative, try to reframe that. And ensure they understand that you're listening to them, and agree what can be done and follow up on whether it can be done, and encourage honest conversations. And sometimes people they hear the gossip and they hear the online stuff and they don't want to discuss it, but sometimes you can bring that to the surface through those online discussions. And again, I suppose it's being good at doing that and learning how to do it properly. And maybe sometimes you probably need to do a bit of training around that too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We've been doing some training just around, Teams etiquette. So Teams is what we use to connect internally in all of our video calling, and just giving some really good tips around, having your video on, if so that people can see you and can hear, connect. To your point, is voice isn't that face to face is just so important, and you get such a different energy from seeing someone's body language. You're also able to pick up on whether they're having a flat day, or I think sometimes silence is a real tell if you're on a big group call and there's just someone who would normally contribute and is quiet a lot. It gives you some signals to sort of follow up. So I think some of the training is good. I also think some of those new rituals I was talking about, so we have Friday night drinks, anyone can join, you jump on, and one of my colleagues was showing us all her Indian spice mix the other night. She was really proud about it, and she had so much she was bringing out, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what's that one? We weren't talking about work, we weren't talking about COVID, we were actually seeing a little bit inside each other's kind of homes and learning a bit more about each other. That's absolutely one of the benefits, I think, of this situation. I feel that we've, as a company, have become a lot closer. We've all met each other's kids, dogs, partners, gardens, flats. We've seen all around each other's homes. There's been a few faux pas thrown in there as well. I think some of the formalities have been broken down, and where that used to happen informally by the water cooler or in the cafeteria or at the pub or wherever it was, I feel that by creating some space for the less formal in this time allows a bit more of that as best you can. It doesn't replace the hug when someone's not feeling great, or the tap on the shoulder or whatever, but it's certainly, I find it a nice relief.
And it's building visual rapport, I think, which is very important. And I suppose learning to think like a shrink, as you say quite rightly, Cadence, to be able to call it out when people are not feeling the love as such, and coming in and following up afterwards is important. And that's why surveys can be extremely useful as well, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we're launching at the end of this month a wellbeing pulse survey. We haven't done it before. It's using our existing survey provider. We're tweaking it, and we're going to be asking everyone monthly a quick little survey to let us know how they're feeling. And at the end of it, it gives a bit of a red, amber, green as to how your mental health is, and also signposts you to various support. Like I mentioned, we're in different countries, so the support's slightly different, but the idea is to really, I think sometimes you don't maybe know how you are until you've gone through a few questions, and then you're like, and then at the end it's sort of, if you are down, sometimes you may not even realize how down you are. And I think this is a nice way of being able to give people some support without having to ask for it as well.
Absolutely, that's great. And I remember one particular occasion, we had one particular team who weren't feeling the love or feeling disaffected in lots of ways. And one of the things we did, they asked us, could we provide mindfulness program for them, and it worked out really well for them. And it was just giving them space to think and to reflect and to learn those skills. And that can be really good in terms of your mental health also. And it's just reaching out to people, finding out what they want rather than us imposing what we think they need, I think is very important. Yeah, definitely.
Do you think we'll go back to the stiff suit, work environment? Will people accept that? Will companies expect it? Will that even be a part of our, work life from now on?
Do you want to? I can jump in first on that one. Well, we don't have a stiff. We've never really had what was the exact words used? We've never really had that, what I consider that old school, we're certainly not for a very long time, culture. I think there's, when I speak to my friends and my colleagues more widely in other industries, I think, a lot of progress has been made in regards to flexibility and the use of technology. I think what this situation has done is shown maybe some of the naysayers or people that were a bit reluctant how well it can be done and how effective and productive people can be. And what I'm hoping is that we'll get back to a nice balance of, face-to-face and in-office connection when we need to, with the flexibility to be able to still work from home or the cafe or your client's office or, the car wash, wherever it is you need to be. I reckon we will see a bit more I'm hopeful we'll see a bit more balance perhaps in other industries where there hasn't been prior to COVID.
I agree with you completely, Cadence, because that's exactly where I'm coming from, because I probably would have been in maybe a more formal environment before, and now I can see the value of less formal, and creating a balance I think is fundamental, because there's so much we can learn from different cultures, and even this experience has sort of exposed us to different cultures and different organizations, and that's been phenomenal in itself. And we realize how effectively this can work, provided, as you say, it's properly managed and balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So we have a bunch of questions. I'm going to go through some of them. And from Annika, I was hoping to hear more about the performance conversation versus performance management. I like the concept. Can you elaborate how I can approach this with HR?
That's a very good point, actually. And I think, can I take that one very briefly?
Please do, yeah, please.
You know, but it's just that people need to know how they're getting on. They need to know how they're measuring up. But as you know, things have changed, and a high degree of flexibility has to be factored into the process. So I can't give you exact examples of what could be done, but I could maybe talk to Andreea afterwards and give you some more information about how to conduct performance conversations as opposed to performance reviews.
So let's do this. For Annika, please join, please have a look at KindLink Global magazine tomorrow. It's kindlink.global, and we'll have something for you from Carole on that particular topic. So thank you for your question. I have a question from Janet Gilbert from the Cotton Tree Trust. She says, on a very specific basis, more immediately, there is a very real need of returning to work, particularly having to use public transport and in-office situations. We can do everything possible to make the work environment safe and encourage home working, but there are some aspects where we absolutely have to be in the office occasionally. How can we reassure people when we know there are dangers?
Very good point. Cadence, do you want to take this one?
That's a really hard one, and that's something that we are, like I mentioned, we're really focused on. We will only, sort of say it's okay to come back to the office when we feel that we're not, when we feel that we're not putting our people at risk to do so. And at the moment, because we're able to all continue working remotely, we're privileged that we can keep doing that. I know that that's not the same for all organisations. I think what we've put in place is we've put in place a very clear decision tree that sort of triggers at what point people may or may not be required to go back in, and the steps that would need to be taken to ensure that they can safely do so. I think it obviously starts from a health and safety point of view, making sure that you've got a very clear understanding of the environment that they're going to be returning to, the restrictions. Is there a is there a co-tenant situation? Have you got other companies using the same lifts as you that might be doing things slightly differently? I think communicating a very clear plan, so letting people know, okay, this is how we will return to work, here's the steps we're following, here's the advice we've been given, here's the checks and the support and the PPE, whatever is required, letting people know what you're doing and reassuring them that this is what's being put in place to ensure safety. We're also going to be implementing compulsory a return to office type training, so everyone from a health and safety point of view before they return to the office will need to complete training to make sure that they're, for example, aware of the social distancing measures, they're aware of how their building is going to be operated, with very clear guidance as to what is expected and what isn't, and very strict consequences if people don't abide by those. So there's some of the checks and balances we're putting in place. But I would say that above all, it's just really open and clear communication, and then having some kind of forum for people to ask questions. So yeah, that would be my approach at the moment.
Carole, would you like to add anything?
It is a huge challenge, isn't it? Particularly now, I live in Ireland, so we don't have the same super challenges you have over there in London, I think, especially in relation to public transport. So I think everything Cadence said was right. You have to sort of ensure that employees know that their health and safety is paramount. And I suppose just communications and constant updates on how to be effective in that environment is key.
We have a question from Mildred, which is also touching upon this topic, and it was going to be my next question too. What suggestions do you have to re-engage people returning to the office? And from my side, what will be the potential challenges when it comes to reintegration, maybe even on a personal level, because people have been locked up essentially for 3 months. So there's going to be some hurdles along the way. So if you could kindly give us a few ideas on what people could be doing for that.
Do you want to go first, Carole? Or?
No, you go first on that one. Yeah.
So I think what we're thinking about is guidance for managers. So thinking about any kind of practical toolkits or guides that we can give them that gives them a bit of a checklist to go through, supports them to support their people to return back to work. Simple things from your, for us, from even just down to IT equipment through to, how they would be, convening, whether what's changed, what hasn't changed, giving that kind of basic need support. I think creating, looking at reintroducing those things that people love to do before. I mean, it all comes down to the social distancing, doesn't it? And the guidelines. I think things will have changed, and I think making people aware of what's changed and what hasn't, and some of the new opportunities or some of the things that they could be doing to reconnect when we're all back together again. I mean, I know that we can't wait to have, it might be a Christmas party at this rate, or maybe next year, but a big gathering, kind of welcoming everyone back and sort of connecting in that celebratory way that we've done in the past. But right now we don't know how long this is going to go on for, or what the new norm is going to look like, certainly for us. So we're trying to take each day, each week as it comes, and like I said, put in place the health and safety plans first, and then look at how we can support our managers to support their people, and then continue that really open and transparent communications that we've started throughout this, and which we will continue as and when people return to the office.
Thank you. Carole? Do we still have Carole? Yeah, we do. There we go.
So sorry about that.
No worries.
Somebody was ringing me, so just apologies. I'm on my phone. Can you hear me now?
No worries. We can hear you. We can see you.
So that is the difficulty when your laptop breaks down. But anyway, not to worry. Sorry about that.
We're still having a bit of fun with this, aren't we? Technology is not always our friend, or not always our best friend. So we're very glad that we're able to do this. Like we said earlier, 20 years ago, this would not have been the case. So, we do have this to sort of be able to navigate the crisis. So welcome back.
That's great. Thank you so much. And sincere apologies for that.
No worries. The question was what potential challenges could we be looking at with reintegrating people into the workplace, and how do you sort of engage them towards coming back?
I think it's the fear and the anxiety is a huge issue that we need to address. And one of the things, again, you're probably sick of me saying this, but checking in with people, listening to people, finding out what are they worried about, in terms of their coming back to the workforce. I think that's going to be very important, because we have no tricks and techniques as such. It's all going to be about the human connection and empathizing with people, and understanding where they're coming from, and getting their views on how they can integrate. And you mentioned earlier, when we discussed this earlier on, Andreea, how nothing is going to be the same ever again. And I think it's people accepting that, I think, is going to be crucial, because you can't sit beside your best buddy now anymore when you go back into the work environment. You might not even have the same team configuration. So it's getting all that clear at the beginning and communicating that with people in a sincere and honest way, I think, and being transparent about it is so important as well. So they won't feel, oh, there's something going on here that we don't know anything about. And I think it's communicating that honestly, I think is very important.
Definitely.
Fantastic. We have another question from Rob Marsh. Do you have any thoughts on what the lockdown and future world of work means for the environmental management side of the CSR puzzle? I think this is for you, Cadence. Is there a danger of sustainability falling off the radar as health and safety takes an understandable priority? Brilliant question.
Yeah. I've just spent about 3 hours today looking at some of some sustainability strategy work that we've been doing. So from my point of view, absolutely not. I think rightly so, the health and safety of our people must and will continue to come first at the moment. But our sustainability, I think, is going to be even more important as we, I think, as organizations and as customers and as people, we're reassessing things. I mean, you know, we've been home. I've been home for 2 months now. My car hasn't moved. I've turned the engine on, but that's about it. You know, we're driving less. We're having less of an impact on the environment. You know, that's a great thing. I think there's lots of other things we're seeing that are coming out of this that that will change maybe the way that we do things, the way that we operate, the way that businesses are affected. So I think now more than ever, we should be looking at our impacts, at how we're responding to those, at how we're communicating that to people, how we're working with our partners, our clients. What is that new norm going to look like? And I think sustainability plays a really, really important part in that.
Brilliant. From Sophie. I've been furloughed from work during the crisis. Can I ask, what is the best way for employers to be engaging with furloughed staff during the crisis, and moving forward, how can organizations engage employees as they bring them back into the working environment if they are able to?
Will you take this, Cadence, please?
Sure, I'll do my best. We've encouraged our people to stay connected whilst they're furloughed. Obviously not working, but we have our workplace, which is where we share everything that's happening around our business, where people are able to connect with each other, and we're still seeing a lot of our people engaged on that platform and trying to stay in touch whilst they're off. We're also encouraging them to do learning and development, so signposting them towards our learning platform and anything specific that's relevant to them. I mentioned the volunteering. We're really trying, working with our managers to make sure they're checking in with their people who are on furlough, seeing how they're doing, keeping them up to date. You know, it's not an easy time for people on furlough right now, and so I think anything that we can do to help them stay connected and just check in and see how they're doing is great. I think when returning to work, I think you're right, we need to put some thought in around how we specifically support those who have been furloughed for, you know, that some people may have been furloughed for a month, others quite significantly longer. So I think you're right, I think we will need to do a piece of work there around supporting those individuals as they return to the workplace, even just giving them a bit of a summary as to what's happened while they've been off, any sort of key developments, talking to them about what they may or may not need. Yeah, it is going to be a new experience for all of us dealing with that situation. So I think, to Carole's point, I think listening to people and asking them what they're going to need is going to be really important, and then putting in place the support to welcome them back. I know that we're really looking forward to doing that.
And I agree with you completely, Cadence, on that one. And one of the things that they've been doing in another organisation is, it's a bit like, you know, when somebody's on maternity leave, having these keeping in touch days during furlough. I think that's very important, you know, as you said quite rightly, Cadence, letting them know what's happening, keeping them up to date, and making sure they're connected. And I think one thing that's really helpful as well is the learning and development, just to make sure they understand that you're concerned about their learning and development and that you want to keep them on board, I think is key.
And actually, if I can jump in, if you are on furlough, we have the COVID-19 response section on KindLink. Go to kindlink.com. There's a banner at the top, and you can essentially sign up to volunteer while on furlough. We have charities from around the UK posting opportunities for you to volunteer. Have a look. You might find something there that you might find quite rewarding to help with. So my next question is, if we're going to sort of draw a line and look at some of the things we've learned during this crisis, what could we take forward? What should companies take forward? 2, 3, 5 things that you can think about, that you can think of, that would help them create a better work environment in the future?
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a very good one.
That is a good one. Do you want, you can go first if you want, Carole.
Well, one of the things I just wanted to focus on, because I think we mentioned this originally, you know, when you've got talented people working for you, how do you keep them engaged? How can you keep them focused? And I think that's probably one thing you need to do going forward is to keep your talent pool current, really, and to look at that and see what are our critical needs and shifts, and where do we, and maybe even thinking about recruiting or developing new skills. And again, I think it's important going forward that managers focus on their talented people and document and share performance and growth trajectory, and also retention risk, I think, is important there as well. And to stay focused on that will be useful in terms of elevating and recognizing your top performance and keeping your mid-range performance on track. And I suppose one of the things I would say going forward, and what you've learned from this, is the importance of talent and how do we need to keep our top performance engaged, possibly. That would be key, I think.
And I would say, I think we've seen incredible examples of real community spirit. I think both inside and outside of organisations, you know, amazing, you know, stories of people rallying together to help each other, to respond in times of need, to think of new ways of doing things. We're coming up with new and innovative ways of doing things that we had never thought of before, in much shorter time frames, perhaps not with the same level of polish or the same, you know, level of planning or as many people involved as you would have done before, but in a time when everyone's needing to think really quickly about things. I think the spirit of that as we move into whatever the next chapter looks like, I think it's really important that we hang on to that, because I think what we're seeing is people collaborating, working in ways that they haven't done so before. The politics is, you know, not all the time, but, you know, the politics generally isn't there. The egos aren't there. The barrier, the silos are breaking down. We're working across teams where I'm really optimistic that this is something that's actually going to transition with us into the next chapter. And I hope it does.
Absolutely, I agree fully, because I see the multi-generational workforce working really in a positive way together, and I see older workers listening to their teams and getting views and ideas from them and learning from them, which they possibly mightn't have had before because of some of the hierarchies involved. So it's really positive from that point of view, and I think there's a greater respect really coming from older generations for the younger generation in terms of their dynamism and their ability to focus and remain resilient, I think, and come up with ideas.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is just that open and transparent communications that we've spoken about. You know, from the minute we were all at home, we had weekly video updates from our CEOs that they filmed themselves on their iPhone that we uploaded to our intranet. There was no polish. One of the time it was super pixelated because the network in his house kept dropping in and out, but we could still hear him and we subtitled it. And I think what people are seeing is just how incredibly important that role of just honest, transparent communication is. And if you do that and you do it with meaning, people understand and they're with you. And I think, you know, I think we've always that's always played a really important part of our style and our culture. But I think that's something too that's really proven to be so incredibly important at bringing people together and helping to feel that we're all in this as a team. So I think, yeah, that will be important moving forward.
Great. And creating an environment of trust, I think, is key, isn't it? You know, that we're all in this together. We're trying to get out of it together. We don't have all the answers. We're listening to each other. We're trying to help each other out. We're collaborating. And I think that's a key message. And I've seen a lot of the polish drop off, but something more honest coming in its place, which people relate to really well. I think that's key going forward, I think.
I mean, a lot of people have been advocating for a long time that leaders should be comfortable, you know, letting their hair down with their teams and show their humanity. Now more than ever, I think they've been forced to. So it turns out whoever advocated for that before was right. I think people appreciate this kind of honesty, and we are all in it together. Our personal context might be slightly different, but at the end of the day, we're all, you know, facing similar challenges. So that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you. I have a somewhat CSR orientated question on something we touched upon earlier, supporting charities needing help. Cadence, budgets, have been cut or maybe put on hold, frozen. How do you choose the things you support right now with the budgets you have? Is it the things that your employees are attached to? Is it things that align with your company values? I assume you get a lot of requests from charities right now because a lot of them have been affected. It might be charities that weren't in your ecosystem before, but they want to be now because they need support. So how do you prioritize the things you support essentially?
Well, I think like all organizations, we've had to be really we've revisited all of our budgets for the coming year, and we've had to really be we've had to reduce them significantly. But one area that our CEOs and our chairman felt was incredibly important was to maintain and keep honouring our commitments when it came to our community investment and our CSR activity, which is something that I'm really proud about. But it is, to your point, it is the onus, and it's something that I feel weighs quite heavily on me. The onus is to make sure that we make every pound work even harder than we have done before, because there is so much need, and you're right, we do get so many requests. So what we're trying to do is to work with our existing charity partners to see what they need now and how we can maybe adapt our support. How can we use our networks, our connections with our clients and our partners? How can we help amplify their messages? How can we get our people behind what they're doing? We've got a number of campaigns running at the moment with existing charity partners, helping them fundraise. So I think we're focusing on those key partnerships, and we're really reviewing them and making sure that what we're spending money on is absolutely going to the people who need it. There's not going to be any caps or t-shirts being handed out right now, put it that way. It really is focused on how can we support them to get to support the people who need it most right now, and then understanding that we can't unfortunately say yes to everyone. So we're doing our best to focus our efforts, but I do think corporates must continue to invest in this space, and now more than ever we need to all rally together to ensure that we support the not-for-profit sector.
Brilliant. We have two questions. They are very specific to you, Cadence. One is someone asking, Helen and Natasha asking for details about your traffic light system, as they called it. I think I could just shoot those questions over to you, and we'll publish the answers in the magazine tomorrow.
Sure.
Liz is also asking over Facebook how to start a career in CSR. Again, I'm happy to shoot that question over to you. Sure. And publish your answer tomorrow. Thank you, Liz. She's also said some very nice things about KindLink, very much appreciated. My final question is this. If we were to imagine what the new normal will look like on employee engagement, HR, everything to do with employee well-being, and then CSR, what will that look like, let's say in a year from now?
Do you want to take that one first, Carole? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
No. I mean, as mentioned earlier, I think what's going to be happening going forward is you mentioned that HR will probably not be the same, that organizational development will be key in all this process, and that we probably have a stronger employee engagement process working through. I think that's going to be very important, and especially from the point of view of mental health and balance, I think that's going to be key. So they're the things I would suggest going forward.
Yeah, and I think what we're doing now will become much more normal. It won't be seen as, because we're in lockdown, it will be seen as just part of the way in which we all do business. I mean, I love coming in to do these sorts of panel discussions, in London, in a nice building with a nice lunch and all those things. But let's face it, that's not practical for everyone. So what I'm hoping is actually that this will become a lot more inclusive. There'll be lots more people able to participate in this way of working. you know, I think we're going to see a real balance, what we were talking about before, between you know, working remotely and being in the office, and hopefully more cultures trusting and supporting their people to work in ways that work for them, because we all know that people are more engaged and more productive when they're working in a way that works for them. So I do think that will continue, and I think on the CSR front, I think it's just you know, hopefully it will shine an even bigger light on why it's so important that that organisations and charities continue to work together to support communities, to respond to crises, to really rally together. I mean, you know, I think if you bring the right people in a room together, and amazing things can happen. And I think, you know, we're seeing that in lots of different ways at the moment. So I think that will continue. I'm optimistic.
And even from our health point, you know, the health systems and watching what's happening there, I think that's inspirational in terms of guiding the rest of us moving forward, I think.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining us today. We're 1 minute out of our dedicated hour. We've had Dr. Carole Hogan, Managing Director of Carole Hogan Associates, and Cadence Willis, Head of Employee Engagement and Corporate Social Responsibility at Collinson. Thank you again both. We will have the webinar and accompanying article available on kindlink.global tomorrow. In the meantime, stay safe, and thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Stay well, everyone.
Bye. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.